Part 1: The 7 Days of Ruin and Rebirth. Chapter 1: The Never-Ending Storm. The garden was only the beginning. After the wall-pinning encounter, Kangdi didn't let me breathe. He swept me into his massive arms, my legs still trembling, and wrapped around his waist and carried me back to the palace. But we didn't make it to the bed immediately. The divine fever was a wildfire that consumed both of us. Every hallway, every shadowed corner became a site of his obsession. He was a 9-foot titan of bronze muscle and golden fire, and I was merely the vessel for his hunger. My modern mind tried to resist, but my body had already surrendered to the scent of the man who claimed to own my soul. For 7 days the sun and moon blurred into one long, breathless night. There was no sanctuary. In the marble bathroom, amidst the steam and the scent of jasmine, he claimed me against the cold stone. On the obsidian floors of the dressing room, he pushed me down, his heavy gold jewelry clinking against the floor as he conquered me from every possible angle. He was relentless. He bit, he licked, he growled, a predatory sound that vibrated through my very bones. I felt like I was being dismantled and rebuilt by his hands. I was no longer Han Seo-Jun. I was a living, breathing extension of the Emperor's will. Every time we reached the peak of our passion, Kangdi would pin my wrists above my head, his golden eyes glowing with a terrifying, dark intensity. He never pulled away. Every single time, he released his hot, thick essence deep inside me, his body shaking with the effort of binding me to him. He wanted to fill me until there was no room left for my old world. "Stay full of me, Seo-Jun," he would hiss into my ear, his voice a deep, vibrating rumble. "Let my seed take root in you. I want you so heavy with my blood that you can never even think of running back to that grey world." The warmth of him inside me brought a strange, intoxicating comfort that I hated and craved all at once. By the 7th day, I was a ghost of a man. My skin was a map of his possessive marks, bruises that looked like dark flowers and bites that felt like brands of ownership. I lay on the bed of white furs, my body aching, my mind a fog of pleasure and exhaustion. The fever had finally broken, but the bond was now a physical weight. Kangdi sat beside me, his large bronze hands stroking my hair with a tenderness that was almost more frightening than his rage. He looked satisfied. He looked like a king who had finally conquered the only territory that mattered. To celebrate the end of the festival, a grand banquet was held. I was dressed in heavy silks of white and gold, my neck adorned with the ruby necklace that marked me as his. But as I stood beside the throne, the smell of the roasted meats and the heavy incense became unbearable. The world began to tilt. The voices of the giants became a distant hum. "Seo-Jun," Kangdi's voice was sharp with sudden alarm. I turned to look at him, but his golden eyes were the last thing I saw before my knees gave out. I collapsed into his arms, the darkness swallowing me whole in front of the entire empire. I woke up hours later in the quiet of the Jade Chambers. The royal physician, an elderly giant with silver eyes, was whispering to Kangdi. When they saw me wake, the room went silent. Kangdi approached the bed, his expression a mix of awe, triumph, and a dark, protective fury. He knelt beside me and placed his massive, warm hand over my stomach. "The fever did its work, Seo-Jun," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You aren't just my mate anymore. You are the mother of my heir. You are carrying the next emperor of the Obsidian throne." I looked down at his hand on my belly and realized my fate was sealed. I was pregnant with the child of a god, and I would never, ever be allowed to leave his side. Season 2, Part 2, The Iron Fortress of the Heart. The news of the imperial pregnancy should have been a time of peace, but instead it lit a fire of treason. In the shadowy corners of the Obsidian Hall, the high nobles, giants who prided themselves on their pure divine blood, began to whisper. To them, I was a lowly human, a creature from a weak world who had no right to carry the future of their race. They feared that a half-human heir would weaken the empire. The whispers turned into a plot, a silent vow to remove the stain from the throne before the child could be born. I felt the shift in the air. The servants looked at me with pity, and the guards grew colder. I was no longer just a toy, I was a target. It happened during a private lunch. A new maid, her hands trembling, offered me a cup of rare lunar nectar. I reached for it, my mind elsewhere, but before my fingers could touch the gold rim, a massive bronze hand slammed onto the table, shattering the glass into 1,000 pieces. Kangdi stood over me, his face a mask of cold, murderous fury. He didn't look at me, he looked at the maid. He dipped a finger into the spilled liquid and watched as the marble floor began to hiss and turn black. Poison. My heart stopped. Kangdi didn't shout, he simply waved his hand, and the shadows in the room rose up like blades, dragging the screaming maid into the darkness. From this moment on, Kangdi's voice boomed, vibrating through the very stones of the palace. "No one enters these chambers. No one touches the Empress. No one breathes the same air as my heir unless I allow it." He turned to me, his golden eyes burning with a terrifying, obsessive protectiveness. He swept me up into his arms, holding me so tight I could feel the frantic thrum of his heart. He moved me to the inner sanctum, a room with no windows, guarded by ancient magic and his own physical presence. I was now a prisoner in the most literal sense. He became my shadow, my taster, my guard. He wouldn't even let me walk to the bath alone. The rebellion didn't last long. Kangdi didn't wait for them to strike again. He summoned the High Council to the throne room. I watched from behind a silk veil as he stood before them, 9 feet of pure, unadulterated power. He didn't ask for names, he simply let his magic flare. The room turned into a furnace of golden light. "You thought to touch what is mine," he whispered, the sound more terrifying than a scream. "You thought to harm the soul of my soul." One by one, the leaders of the anti-human faction were brought to their knees, their gold jewelry melting off their bodies from the sheer heat of his rage. He didn't kill them, not yet. He stripped them of their titles and cast them into the abyss, a warning to anyone who dared to look at me with anything but worship. That night, back in the safety of the inner sanctum, Kangdi wouldn't let go of me. He sat on the bed, pulling me into his lap, his massive arms wrapped around me like iron bands. He buried his face in my neck, his breath hot and shaky. "I almost lost you," he murmured, his voice thick with a dark, desperate love. "I will kill them all, Seo-Jun. I will turn this world into a graveyard before I let a single scratch touch you or our child." I felt the weight of his obsession. It was heavy, it was frightening, but as I felt the tiny life kicking inside me, I realized I didn't want to be anywhere else. I leaned back against his broad, bronze chest, closing my eyes as the Emperor of the World wept silent, possessive tears into my hair. Season 2, Part 3, The Blood of the Starborn. The pregnancy was not like anything the Obsidian Empire had ever seen. While a normal Titan pregnancy was stable, mine was a storm of chaotic energy. I was constantly burning with a fever that wasn't a sickness, but a surge of power. The royal physicians, giants who had served the throne for centuries, were baffled. They stood by my bed, their silver instruments trembling. "We cannot explain it, Your Majesty," the head physician whispered to Kangdi. "The Empress's body is absorbing magic at a rate that should be impossible. His pulse is like a drumbeat of a god, and his skin, it emits a silver glow that we have no record of. He is human, yet his biology is adapting to your power as if he were made for it." Kangdi stood over me, his golden eyes filled with a dark, helpless frustration. He could conquer worlds, but he couldn't understand the mystery of the man in his arms. I didn't have the answers either. All I had were the dreams. Every time I closed my eyes, I was transporting to a world of silver mist and floating crystals. I saw a man, beautiful, with the same pale skin as mine, clutching a leather-bound book to his chest. He was crying, his stomach swollen with a child. "Run, my little star," he would whisper, his voice echoing through the void. "They will kill you because you are too powerful to be controlled. The book is the only way. Hide in the world where magic is dead." I would wake up screaming, my heart racing, the ancient book on my nightstand glowing with a faint, rhythmic silver light. I didn't know that the man in my dreams was my father, Minho, and that he had spent 300 of this world's years in exile just to keep me alive. The mystery reached its breaking point when a diplomatic summit was called. The Silver Kingdom, a realm that had been isolated for centuries, sent their ruler for a peace treaty. King Alaric arrived with a fleet that turned the sky into a mirror. He was a titan of 9 feet, just like Kangdi, but his skin was a pale, moonlight bronze and his hair was a waterfall of pure silver. Kangdi sat on his throne, holding me possessively on his lap, his massive arm wrapped around my waist. He didn't want the Silver King to even look at me. He sensed a threat he couldn't name, the maps or the treaties. He looked at me. His silver eyes widened, and he staggered back as if he had been struck. Chapter 2, Minho. "Minho," Alaric whispered, his voice a broken sob that echoed through the silent hall. He ignored the guards' spears and stepped toward the throne, his hands trembling. "My lost star, you've come back to me." I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs. That name. It was the name I had heard every day of my life in Seoul. How do you know that name?" I asked, my voice trembling as I stood up from Kangdi's lap. "Minho, that is my father's name. That is my appa. How do you know him?" The entire hall gasped. King Alaric stopped, his silver eyes searching my face with a desperate, agonizing hope. "Your father," Alaric breathed, tears finally spilling down his moonlight bronze cheeks. "Then it's true, he made it. He survived the void." Kangdi pulled me back, his golden eyes flashing with a dangerous, jealous fire. "Explain yourself, Alaric. What does a human boy from another world have to do with the Silver Kingdom?" Alaric looked at Kangdi, then back at me. "He is not just a human emperor. He is the son of the man I have hunted for 300 years. He is the son of my mate." Alaric began to speak, and the world around me started to crumble. 300 years ago, which was only 10 years in your world, Minho was the prince of the Silver Mist. He was a starborn of the origin race, the most beautiful and powerful male to ever exist. We were to be wed, we were to rule together. But the Council of Elders feared the power of our union. When Minho became pregnant with you, they saw you as a monster, a child with enough power to destroy the balance of all realms. They ordered the child to be extinguished the moment he left the womb. Chapter 5: The Great Escape into the Void. 000600. Minho couldn't let them kill you, Alaric continued, his voice thick with grief. He was 8 months pregnant with you when he stole the Book of Keys, a fragment of his own soul. He knew that the only way to save you was to go to a world where magic didn't exist, a world where the council couldn't follow. He stood at the edge of the Great Rift and jumped into the void. To you, he was a man who raised you in soul for 15 years, but to me, I have spent 3 centuries staring at an empty bed, wondering if the man I loved was dead or alive. Chapter 6: The Jealous Emperor and the Legacy. 000730. Kang Di's grip on me tightened until it was almost painful. He realized now that I wasn't just a stray human he had summoned. I was the lost royalty of his greatest rival. The jealousy in his eyes was suffocating. He is my mate now, Alaric, Kang Di hissed, his 9-foot frame towering over the Silver King. I don't care whose son he is, he carries my heir now. But I wasn't listening to their posturing. I was looking at the book on the table. My father had been a prince. He had been a hero who sacrificed a kingdom to save me. And now I realized that the dreams I was having weren't just dreams. They were my father's memories calling out to me from the void where he is still trapped. I looked at Alaric, then at Kang Di, and for the first time I felt the true power of the starborn waking up in my blood. I wasn't a toy. I was the key to everything. Part 4: The Legacy of the Starborn. The atmosphere in the Obsidian throne room was suffocating. Emperor Kang Di sat like a mountain of bronze, his golden eyes fixed on the visitor from the silver mist. I was tucked into his side, my pregnant belly a silent testament to our bond. Across from us stood King Alaric. He was here for a peace treaty to end the centuries of Cold War, but the moment he saw me, the treaty was forgotten. He looked at me with a gaze so raw, so filled with a 300-year-old agony, that I felt my soul tremble. He didn't see an empress, he saw a ghost. Minho, Alaric whispered, his voice cracking. He stepped forward, ignoring the guards' spears. My little starflower, you've finally come back to the mist. I felt a jolt of electricity through my spine. That nickname, Starflower, was the secret name my father used to whisper to me in the dark of our Seoul apartment. How do you know that name? I cried out, standing up despite Kang Di's tightening grip. That was my father's name for me. Who are you to him? Alaric's silver eyes filled with tears. I am the man who has spent 3 centuries searching for the wind. I am the father you never knew. Kang Di roared, pulling me back into his lap, his jealousy flaring like a sun. He is my mate, Alaric. He belongs to no one else. Alaric looked at Kang Di with a sad, mocking smile. You don't even know what he is, do you? You think he is a fragile human. He is of the origin race, the most powerful beings to ever walk the stars. We are not like you titans, bound by the fate of the stars. We choose our own mates. We are the creators of life. Our bodies are divine. We can endure any amount of passion, any intensity of a mate's power. We are built to be the perfect partners for the strongest kings and our children. Our children have the power to either build worlds or burn them to ash. Listen to me, Seo-Jun, Alaric pleaded, his voice soft with love. In our world, 1 year is equal to 30 years on Earth. When your father, Minho, fled with you in his womb, he was escaping a death sentence. The council feared the origin power you carried. To you, he raised you for 15 years in Seoul. But here, I have been mourning him for 450 years. When you were 15, he vanished from your world because his magic was exhausted. He didn't leave you. He was dragged into the void prison as punishment for his escape. He has been trapped in a timeless darkness for what feels like an eternity to us, waiting for the key to be turned. Kang Di's golden eyes burned with a dark, possessive fire. He hated that Alaric looked at me with such familiarity. He hated that I looked exactly like the man Alaric had loved for centuries. You speak as if he is your lover, Kang Di hissed, his 9-foot frame looming over the Silver King. You lost your mate because of your own negligence, Alaric. You let him run. I will never let Seo-Jun out of my sight. I don't care about your origin race or your void prison. He is the empress of the Obsidian throne. I looked at Kang Di, then at Alaric. You loved him, and you let him go. You let my Appa suffer in the dark for 300 years while you sat on your throne. I grabbed the ancient book from the table. It was glowing with a fierce, rhythmic silver light, pulsing in time with my own heartbeat. This book, I whispered. It isn't just a portal, Seo-Jun, Alaric said, his silver eyes fixed on the relic. It is a piece of Minho's soul. He tore a part of himself away to create a map for you. It is the only key that can find him in the void. He left it for you so that one day, when your power awakened, you could bring him home. I realized then that my father was still alive, frozen in a moment of agony, waiting for me. The dreams I had were his cries for help. Kangdi sensed my resolve, and his grip became suffocating. He knew that if I used the book, I might leave him. I will not let you risk yourself for a ghost, Seo-Jun, he growled, his face buried in my neck. You are pregnant with my heir, your body belongs to me. I looked at the Emperor, the man who loved me with a terrifying obsession, and then at the Silver King, the father who had lost everything. I felt the origin power surging in my blood, the insatiable hunger for my mate, but also the divine strength to protect my bloodline. He is my father, Kangdi, I said, my voice echoing with a power that made the giants in the room tremble. He sacrificed 300 years of his life so I could be born. I am the key, and I am going to bring him back whether you help me or not. Part 5, The Awakening of the Star King. The air around the Obsidian Palace didn't just vibrate, it screamed. I stood at the center of the ritual circle, the Book of Keys floating before me, its pages turning so fast they blurred into a whirlwind of silver light. Kangdi stood to my left, his golden aura flaring like a dying sun, his massive hand gripping my shoulder to keep me grounded. To my right stood King Alaric, his silver magic weaving into the air, his face a mask of 300-year-old desperation. We were three powers, gold, silver, and the raw, ancient magic of the origin race, tearing at the fabric of the universe to find one man. It's too strong, Alaric roared, his silver hair whipping around his face. The void is fighting back, it won't let him go. The portal in the sky looked like a jagged wound, bleeding black shadows that tried to swallow us whole. I felt my strength failing. The starborn power in my blood was being drained by the darkness. I fell to my knees, clutching my stomach, gasping for air. The portal began to shrink, the silver light fading. I felt a cold horror. Was I going to lose him again? Was my Appa going to stay in the dark forever? Suddenly, I felt a surge of heat from within my womb. It wasn't a kick, it was a pulse of pure, blinding energy. My baby, the Imperial heir, wasn't even born yet, but he could feel my distress. A wave of golden silver light erupted from my stomach, shooting straight into the Book of Keys. The baby's magic acted as a bridge, stabilizing the rift. The black shadows were incinerated instantly. Kangdi and Alaric watched in awe as the unborn child's power forced the portal wide open, pinning the edges of reality back with a strength that surpassed even the two kings. The sky didn't just flash, it exploded in a symphony of white and violet light. From the heart of the rift, a figure began to descend. The clouds parted as if bowing to their master. It was him, Minho. He looked exactly like the man in my dreams, but 1,000 times more beautiful. His skin was like translucent porcelain, his hair a river of starlight that reached his ankles. He was draped in tattered silver silks that fluttered in the magical wind. As his feet touched the ground, the entire Obsidian Empire felt a wave of peace. The origin race blood in the air recognized its king. He looked fragile, yet his presence was so powerful it made the giants drop to their knees instinctively. Minho's eyes, the same pale, beautiful eyes as mine, slowly opened. He looked at Alaric, then at me. Alaric, he whispered, his voice like the first breeze of spring. Alaric didn't wait. He sprinted across the hall and caught Minho before he could collapse, pulling his lost mate into a crushing, tearful embrace. The Silver King was sobbing openly, burying his face in the neck of the man he had mourned for 300 years. Minho then looked at me, reaching out a trembling hand. My little star, you grew up, you brought me home. I threw myself into his arms, the scent of silver mist and home finally surrounding me. For the first time in my life, the hole in my heart was filled. Kangdi approached us, his golden eyes soft but still possessively fixed on me. He knelt before Minho, a sign of respect no one thought the Obsidian Emperor would ever show. "Welcome back, Prince of the Mist," Kangdi rumbled. "Your son is the heart of my empire. Your grandson is the future of my throne. You are safe here." Minho smiled, a divine, radiant expression that lit up the dark hall, but as he looked at the portal, his smile faded. The council, they saw the rift. They know the starborn has returned. They are coming, Alaric. They are coming for the child. The reunion was sweet, but the war for our existence had only just begun. The origin race was waking up, and the universe would never be the same. Part 6, The Wrath of the Origin Realm. The return of the prince has triggered the reopening of a world that was thought to be lost forever, bringing with it a power that threatens to overshadow even the great emperors. Part 6, The Wrath of the Origin Realm. The moment Minho's feet touched the ground, the sky didn't just close, it transformed. A massive, shimmering gateway appeared, revealing a world that had been invisible for 300 years, the eternal kingdom of the Origin. It was a realm of white marble and floating gardens, a place so beautiful it made the Obsidian Empire look like a shadow. As the veil lifted, thousands of figures began to descend from the clouds. They were the people of the origin, ethereal, breathtakingly beautiful, and radiating a magical pressure so intense that the giant Titan warriors of the palace began to tremble. Their king had returned, and the world that had vanished with him was finally awake. These were not giants, but they were far more terrifying. They moved with a silent, deadly grace, their eyes glowing with a cold, ancient light. As they landed in the great hall, their leader, a warrior with wings of spun glass, stepped forward. They weren't happy, they were furious. For 3 centuries, they had isolated themselves, cutting off their magic from the universe in a self-imposed exile because they felt the other races had failed to protect their prince. They looked at the bronze giants and the silver titans with pure disdain, seeing them as nothing more than brutes who had allowed their star king to suffer in the void. The tension in the hall reached a breaking point. The origin warriors raised their crystal blades, ready to strike at the titans for their perceived treachery. But before they could move, 2 massive shadows fell over the room. Kangdi stepped in front of me, his 9-foot frame a wall of golden fire, while Alaric stood before the weakened Minho, his silver aura clashing against the newcomers. "Stand down," Kangdi roared, his voice shaking the palace. "You are in my domain now. Touch my empress, and I will erase your kingdom from the maps." Alaric's silver eyes burned with a protective rage. "You hid while he suffered. You have no right to claim him now." The 2 giant kings stood like mountains, shielding their smaller, delicate mates from the wrath of the ethereal host. Despite the chaos, Minho was fading. The 300 years in the void had drained his life force to the brink of extinction. He collapsed in Alaric's arms, his skin turning a translucent, deathly grey. "He is dying," I screamed, rushing to his side. The anger of the origin warriors vanished instantly, replaced by a desperate grief. They realized that their king was a ghost of his former self. The leader of the host knelt, his glass wings folding in submission. The prince's soul is fractured. Only the combined magic of his mate and his blood can save him now. We moved Minho to the Jade Sanctuary. The healing process was a grueling display of power. Alaric poured his silver life force into his long-lost mate, while I used the starborn magic of my pregnancy to bridge the gap. Kangdi stood behind me, his hands on my shoulders, feeding me his golden energy so I wouldn't collapse. It was a symphony of magic, gold, silver, and the pure white light of the origin. For hours, we fought to pull Minho back from the edge of the afterlife. I felt my father's heartbeat slowly sync with mine, a weak but steady rhythm returning to his chest. As Minho finally fell into a deep, healing sleep, the palace settled into a heavy, watchful silence. But the peace was deceptive. Kangdi's protectiveness had reached a level of madness. He refused to let me leave the room, even to see my father. He sat by the door, his golden eyes never closing, watching every breath I took. "The origin people want to take you back to their world, Seo-Jun," he whispered, his voice dark and possessive. "They think this world is beneath you, but they are wrong. You are the heart of the Obsidian throne. You are carrying my blood. I will kill every one of those beautiful warriors before I let them take a single step toward you." I looked at my sleeping father, and then at my obsessive husband, realizing that while one war had ended, a new struggle for my freedom was just beginning. Part 7: The Sacrifice of the Golden King. The air in the Jade Sanctuary, once thick with the scent of impending war, suddenly turned sweet and cool. Minho's eyes fluttered open, glowing with a soft, divine white light. As he sat up, the origin warriors, who were seconds away from slaughtering the Titan guards, immediately dropped to their knees. A single wave of Minho's hand silenced the chaos. His voice, though weak, carried the authority of 1,000 years. "Enough," he whispered. "The blood of the Titans and the silver mist saved me. We do not repay life with death." The room fell into a heavy, respectful silence, as the Star King's presence brought a fragile peace to the 2 warring worlds. But the peace was short-lived. Minho reached out, his trembling hand resting on my swollen stomach. His expression shifted from relief to a cold, sharp horror. He looked at the origin healers, who were scanning my body with silver light. "The child," Minho breathed, his voice trembling. "The obsidian magic is too heavy. Seo-Jun's human half is failing. The baby is a starborn of the highest order. It is consuming Seo-Jun's life force to survive because this world's atmosphere is toxic to an origin pregnancy." The head healer bowed low. "The prince is right. If the empress stays here, the birth will kill him. His heart cannot sustain the power of a god in a realm of shadows." Kangdi's reaction was instantaneous and violent. He roared, his golden magic exploding outward, cracking the marble floor. He snatched me from the bed, pinning me against his massive bronze chest. "No," he hissed, his golden eyes burning with a desperate, obsessive madness. "He is mine. He stays here. I will build a sun inside this palace if I have to. I will kill the gods themselves before I let him leave my sight." He held me so tight I could feel his heart thundering like a war drum. He was a man possessed, a king who would rather see the world burn than lose the only person who made him feel human. Minho stood up, supported by Alaric, and walked toward the emperor. He didn't look at Kangdi with anger, but with the pity of a man who had once lost everything. "Emperor," Minho said softly, "I ran to a dead world to save my son. Will you let him die in a living one just to satisfy your pride? If he stays, you will be a father to a corpse and a king of a graveyard. Only the eternal kingdom can stabilize his blood. Only our son can feed the child without killing the mother." I looked up at Kangdi, my eyes filled with tears. I could feel my strength fading. Every breath felt like lead. "Kangdi, please, I want to live. I want our baby to live." The silence that followed was the most painful moment of my life. I saw the struggle in Kangdi's eyes, the war between his dark, possessive obsession and his soul-deep love for me. His grip slowly loosened. His massive hands trembled as they slid from my waist. For the first time, the invincible emperor of the Obsidian throne looked broken. "Go," he whispered, the words sounding like it was being ripped from his throat. "Go before I change my mind and chain you to the walls. Go, and live." He turned away, unable to watch as the Origin warriors prepared the transport. He couldn't bear to see the light of his life leaving his dark kingdom. At the edge of the shimmering gateway to the Origin realm, Alaric and Minho stood ready. Minho looked back at the Silver King, a silent promise of a future reunion passing between them. I stood at the threshold, looking back at the palace. Kangdi was standing on the highest balcony, a lonely 9-foot silhouette against the darkening sky. "I will come back," I screamed toward him, my voice echoing across the valley. "I will bring your son home." Kangdi didn't move, but I felt his golden magic reach out one last time, a soft caress against my cheek. As I stepped into the rift with my father, the world of shadows vanished, replaced by a blinding celestial light. The Emperor was alone again, waiting in the dark for the return of his star. Part 8: The Celestial Birth and the Emperor's Return. 2 months in the Eternal Kingdom felt like a lifetime. Under the guidance of my father, Minho, I learned to embrace the blood of the Origin race. He taught me how to breathe with the stars and how to shield my mind from the Council of Elders. My body, once fragile and human, was now a vessel of pure, radiant energy. The divine fever had evolved into a calm, steady power, but as my belly grew larger, so did the shadow of the Council. They watched me from their high towers, their eyes cold and calculating. They didn't see a grandson, they saw a weapon of mass destruction that needed to be contained. The labor began during the eclipse of the twin suns. The pain was unlike anything I had ever felt. It was a storm of gold and silver magic tearing through my soul. Minho held my hand, his own magic stabilizing the room as the walls began to crack from the pressure of the birth. With one final, agonizing scream, the room was flooded with a light so bright it blinded the healers. The cry that followed wasn't human, it was a roar of power. The baby was beautiful, a perfect fusion of 2 worlds. He had the warm bronze skin of his father and a tuft of silvery black hair, but when he opened his eyes, they were a brilliant, molten gold. The imperial heir had arrived. The joy was short-lived. Before I could even hold my son, the doors to the birthing chamber were blasted open. The Council of Elders entered, their white robes flowing like ghosts. "The child's power is too great," the High Elder declared, his voice devoid of emotion. "He will destabilize the Origin realm. He must be placed in the Chamber of Silence until his magic can be drained." Minho stood in front of my bed, his silver magic flaring in a desperate shield. "You will not touch him, he is my grandson." But Minho was still weak from his time in the void. The elders raised their staffs, and I realized with a sinking horror that we were trapped. They were going to steal my baby. I clutched my son to my chest, feeling his tiny heart beating against mine. I closed my eyes and reached deep into the soul bond I had tried to ignore. I didn't use the book, I used the blood of the baby. I sent a scream through the dimensions, a desperate, telepathic cry for the only man who could save us. "KNGDE, they are taking our son, help US." I poured every ounce of my new Origin magic into that call, sending a golden flare across the universe, straight to the Obsidian throne. In the Obsidian Empire, thousands of miles away, Kangdi had spent 2 months in a dark, murderous silence. He was sitting on his throne, his golden eyes cold and dead, when my voice suddenly exploded in his mind. He stood up so fast the throne shattered behind him. His golden magic erupted in a pillar of fire that pierced the sky. "They dare," his voice roared, shaking the entire planet. He didn't wait for a portal, he didn't wait for a fleet. He grabbed his black gold spear and used the raw power of his obsession to tear a hole in reality with his bare hands. The Emperor was coming, and he was bringing the wrath of 1,000 suns with him. Back in the Eternal Kingdom, The elders were about to seize the child when the sky above the palace turned black. A jagged, golden rift tore open, and a shadow fell over the city. Kangdi stepped through the rift, his 9-foot frame wreathed in black smoke and golden lightning. He looked like a god of death. He landed in the center of the chamber, the floor liquefying under his feet. He didn't look at the elders, he looked at me and the baby. "I told you, Seo-Jun," he whispered, his voice a terrifying, low rumble that made the elders stumble back in fear. "I told you I would burn the heavens to keep you safe." He turned to the council, his golden eyes burning with a dark, obsessive promise. "Now, who wants to be the first to die for touching what is mine?" Part 9, The Sovereign's Sanctuary. The battle for the Eternal Kingdom didn't last long. When Kangdi stepped through that rift, he wasn't just a king, he was a force of nature. He didn't negotiate with the Council of Elders, he decimated them. With a single sweep of his black gold spear, he shattered their silver towers and turned their chamber of silence into dust. He scooped me and our newborn son into his massive arms, shielding us with a golden aura that felt like a second skin. "We are leaving," he growled, his voice echoing with a finality that silenced the entire realm. He didn't look back as he stepped through the rift, carrying us away from the light of the origin and back into the shadows of the Obsidian throne. The return was a triumph. The entire Obsidian Empire was lined up for miles, thousands of bronze giants kneeling in the rain as their emperor returned with the Empress and the golden heir. Kangdi didn't stop for the celebrations. He took us straight to the inner sanctum, the doors locking behind us with a magical seal that only his blood could open. He had lost us once, he was never going to let it happen again. For the first few weeks, he didn't even let the servants touch the baby. He bathed us, he fed us, and he watched us sleep with a dark, silent intensity that bordered on madness. 1 year has passed since that chaotic night. The palace is now a fortress of love and obsession. Our son Han Seo is a year old and he is already a marvel. He has the rich, warm bronze skin of his father and the delicate, handsome features I brought from my world. But it's his eyes that command the room, molten gold, just like Kangdi's, but with a silver ring around the iris that marks his origin blood. He doesn't crawl, he floats. His magic is already so strong that he accidentally turns his toys into solid gold when he's happy. He is the perfect fusion of two worlds, and the apple of his father's obsessive eye. Kangdi's obsession has only grown with time. He has become a shadow that never leaves me. Whether I am in the gardens or the library, I feel his presence, a 9-foot titan of bronze muscle always within arm's reach. He has grown his hair even longer, a silken black river that he often wraps around me when we sleep. He is softer now, his touch is filled with a deep, aching devotion, but the darkness is still there. He still tastes my food before I eat, and he still checks the locks on the doors every night. He loves me with a weight that would crush any other man, but as a starborn, I have learned to thrive under his heavy, golden gaze. Tonight we stand on the balcony, watching the twin moons rise. Kangdi is behind me, his massive arms wrapped around my waist, his chin resting on my shoulder. I am holding Han Seo, who is reaching out his tiny bronze hands toward the stars, giggling as silver sparks fly from his fingertips. "He looks just like you when you're determined," Kangdi whispers, his voice a deep, vibrating rumble against my ear. "And he has your temper," I tease, leaning back into his warmth. Kangdi turns me around, his golden eyes searching mine with that familiar, hungry intensity. He is our legacy, Seo-Jun, the proof that the universe couldn't keep us apart. He leans down, his lips brushing against the gold mark on my neck, the mark that has deepened in color over the year. "I spent 300 years waiting for a ghost," he murmurs, his grip tightening possessively. "Now I have a kingdom, a son and a mate who is the soul of my soul. I will never let this end. Even if the stars fall and the worlds collide, you will always be here in my arms where you belong." I look at my husband, the beautiful monster who stole me from Seoul, and then at my son, the miracle of our union. I realize that I don't miss the grey streets of my old life. I am the Empress of the Obsidian throne, and in this world of giants, I have finally found a love that is as vast as the heavens. Part 10, The Secret of the Origin Blood. The gates of the Obsidian Palace opened to welcome the most honored guests in the universe. Minho and King Alaric arrived together, their hands entwined, showing the world that the Silver Mist and the Origin Realm were finally at peace. They had spent the last year rebuilding their lives, but their hearts were always with their son. As they entered the inner sanctum, Kangdi stood to greet them, his 9-foot frame towering over everyone, but his golden eyes held a rare look of respect. I ran into my father Minho's arms, the scent of silver mist and home surrounding me once again. After the formal dinner, Alaric and Kangdi went to the balcony to discuss the Empire's defenses, leaving me alone with my father Minho. We sat in the garden, the moonlight reflecting off the gold jewelry I wore. Minho looked at me, his eyes tracing the faint, possessive marks on my neck and the way I leaned into the cushions for support. Seo-Jun, he said softly, his voice filled with a father's intuition. Kangdi is a titan of immense power. His obsession with you is legendary. Have you never wondered how your small, delicate body survives a man like him? I looked down, my face flushing a deep red. I don't know, Appa. Sometimes I feel like I should break, but instead I just crave him more. I feel like my body was made for his weight. Minho smiled sadly, taking my hands in his. That is the secret of our lineage, the origin race. We are not fragile, Seo-Jun. Our bodies are divine vessels. We are designed to perfectly adapt to our mates. The more powerful, the more dominant, and the more monstrous the mate is, the more our bodies expand and strengthen to handle them. You don't break because your cells are literally rewriting themselves to match Kangdi's intensity. Our race was created to be the mates of the strongest beings in the universe, Minho continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. If your mate is a god, you become a goddess. If your mate is a titan, your body becomes a fortress that can endure his every whim. This is why you feel that heat, that insatiable hunger. Your body needs his power, his essence, and his weight to stay balanced. Without his intensity, an origin mate would wither away. Kangdi's dark obsession isn't just a choice, it's a biological necessity for your survival. Suddenly, the air grew heavy and warm. I didn't need to turn around to know he was there. Kangdi stepped out of the shadows, his golden eyes glowing with a mix of pride and dark desire. He had heard everything. He walked over and pulled me from the seat, settling me onto his massive lap right in front of my father. So he was made for me, Kangdi rumbled, his large bronze hand splaying across my stomach, his thumb stroking the silk of my robe. Minho looked at the emperor and nodded. He is the only thing in existence that can truly contain your fire, Kangdi. Treat him well, for he is the only one who will never break under your shadow. Kangdi buried his face in my neck, his long black hair veiling us from the world. I knew it, he whispered against my skin, his voice thick with a terrifying, beautiful obsession. I felt it every time I held you. You aren't just my mate, you are my perfect half. I will never have to hold back again. I leaned back against his broad, muscular chest, finally understanding the fire in my own blood. I wasn't a victim of his obsession. I was the only one capable of surviving it. As my two fathers watched with a mix of worry and peace, I realized that in this world of giants, I was the most powerful of them all, because I was the only one who could tame the monster. Part 11, The Return of the Divine Fever. The 6 months following the birth of our son, Kang Seo, were a blur of exhaustion and overwhelming devotion. My body, though a divine vessel, had been drained by the explosive use of origin magic during the rescue. For half a year I was barely allowed to leave the bed. Kangdi became my world. He refused to let the healers touch me, insisting on bathing me, feeding me, and even brushing my hair himself. He was a 9-foot shadow of bronze muscle, his golden eyes never leaving my face. Our son was healthy, a perfect little titan, but Kangdi's primary obsession remained me. He nursed me back to health with a possessiveness that was both suffocating and deeply sweet. As the 7th month approached, the atmosphere in the palace began to shift. The air grew heavy and sweet, vibrating with a familiar magical tension. It was the anniversary of the divine fever, the 7 days of sacred union. I was finally feeling strong again, my skin glowing with a new, healthy radiance. I didn't realize that the fever wasn't just a one-time event. For an origin mate and a titan, it was a yearly cycle of reclaiming and rebinding. I was blissfully clueless, playing with Kang Seo in the nursery, while the rest of the palace prepared for the storm. My father Minho and King Alaric came to visit before the festival began. As I hugged my father, I noticed a strange, ethereal glow around him, a silver light that was even brighter than usual. He looked radiant, his hand resting unconsciously on his stomach. "Appa, you look different," I whispered. Minho leaned in, a beautiful blush creeping up his neck. "Alaric was very persistent after we were reunited, Seo-Jun. It seems you are going to have a little brother or sister." I froze, my entire face turning a deep, burning red. My father was pregnant. The thought of my Appa and the 9-foot silver king together made me want to hide under the covers for a week. While I was reeling from the news, Kangdi pulled my father aside for a secret meeting. I watched from the doorway as the two men, the Obsidian Emperor and the Star King, whispered in the shadows. Kangdi looked uncharacteristically nervous. "Minho," Kangdi rumbled, his voice low, "the fever returns tomorrow. Seo-Jun is finally healthy, but I fear my intensity might be too much for him after the recovery. And the baby, can we leave Kang Seo with you for the week?" Minho let out a soft, mischievous chuckle, a playful glint in his silver eyes. He looked at his son-in-law and patted his massive bronze arm. "Don't worry, Kangdi, his body is ready, but I suggest you lock the doors well. He has no idea what's coming, does he?" Kangdi shook his head, a dark, satisfied smirk playing on his lips. Minho gave him a good luck smile that was surprisingly naughty for a king. My father knew exactly how intense the origin bond could be, and he was clearly enjoying the fact that I was completely unaware of the siege that was about to begin. Just remember, Minho teased, he's an origin vessel. He can handle everything you give him, and he'll probably ask for more by day 3. Kangdi's golden eyes flared with a sudden, hungry fire. He thanked his father-in-law and turned toward me, his gaze so predatory and possessive that I felt a shiver run down my spine. "What were you two talking about?" I asked as Kangdi approached me, his massive frame casting a long shadow over me. "Just family matters, my treasure," he whispered, his voice a deep, vibrating bass. He picked me up, my feet dangling in the air, and tucked my head into the crook of his neck. "Why are the servants clearing the halls?" I asked, noticing the palace going quiet. Kangdi didn't answer. He just kissed the mark on my neck, his tongue tracing the gold lines. "The sun is setting, Seo-Jun, and for the next 7 days the only world you will know is this room, and me." I looked at him, confused and blushing, as he kicked the heavy jade doors shut and locked them with a golden seal. The second divine fever had begun, and I was about to learn exactly why my father had been smiling. Part 12, The Fever of the Emerald Moon. The festival of the new season was a sea of vibrant colors. To celebrate our son's health and my recovery, the palace was draped in shades of spring. I stood beside Kangdi on the royal balcony, looking down at the thousands of cheering giants. I felt beautiful. My hair had grown long, flowing down my back like a silken black river. We were dressed in matching light green silk robes, the fabric so fine it felt like a cool breeze against my skin. I held our son, Kang Seo, who was dressed in a tiny version of my emerald tunic. I felt at peace, thinking the divine fever was a distant memory, a trial I had already passed. I had no idea that my body was a ticking time bomb, waiting for the sun to set. As the public ceremony ended, my father Minho and King Alaric approached us. Minho had a knowing, gentle smile on his face as he reached out for the baby. "Let us take Kang Seo for the evening, Seo-Jun," my father whispered, his silver eyes twinkling with a secret mischief. "He hasn't spent much time with his grandfathers lately. Go, enjoy the ride back to the palace with your husband." I handed the baby over, thinking they just wanted to play with him. I didn't notice the way Alaric and Kangdi exchanged a silent, heavy look. I didn't notice the way the guards were being dismissed. I simply waved goodbye, feeling light and free, unaware that I was being led into a beautiful trap. We boarded the imperial carriage, a massive floating vessel of gold and glass. As we began our journey back through the high mountain passes, the palace still miles away, the air inside the carriage suddenly changed. It became thick, sweet, and suffocatingly hot. A sharp, agonizing pain shot through my lower body, followed by a wave of heat so intense I gasped for air. My origin vessel was waking up, reacting to the anniversary of our bond. I felt a desperate, throbbing ache between my legs that made my head spin. I tried to stand, but my knees buckled, and I collapsed directly onto Kangdi's lap. "Kangdi, something is wrong," I sobbed, my face flushing a deep, feverish red. I was burning from the inside out. I reached for him, my hands trembling as I grabbed his broad, muscular shoulders. I didn't wait for him to speak. I crashed my lips against his, kissing him with a hunger that terrified me. I was a man possessed, my body demanding his touch, his weight, his everything. Kangdi didn't pull away. He sat there like a bronze god, his golden eyes glowing with a dark, satisfied fire. He had been waiting for this. He knew the fever would hit the moment the sun touched the horizon. He wrapped his massive arms around me, pulling me flush against his rock-hard chest. "The palace is too far, Seo-Jun," he rumbled, his voice a deep, vibrating bass that made my skin prickle. "Your body won't wait." He didn't tell the driver to hurry. Instead, he used his magic to steer the carriage down toward the ancient, glowing forest below. We landed near the edge of a crystal-clear Lake Seoul, the water reflecting the emerald light of the moon. The forest was silent, the air filled with the scent of wild flowers and damp earth. Kangdi stepped out of the carriage, carrying me in his arms. I was thrashing against him, my silk robes half torn, my mind lost in a fog of desire. He laid me down on a bed of soft moss at the water's edge. The cool night air hit my heated skin, but it wasn't enough. I needed the fire. "Please," I whimpered, my eyes hazy as I looked up at his handsome, bronze face. "Make it stop, I want you. I need you inside me." Kangdi leaned over me, his long black hair veiling us from the world. He looked at me with a love that was as dark as it was beautiful. "This is the first night of 7, my treasure," he whispered, his large hand sliding possessively over my thigh. "And this time there are no walls to hide your screams. The whole forest will know who you belong to." As the emerald moon rose higher, the emperor began his claim. the quiet of the lake shattered by the sounds of a passion that had been building for an entire year. Part 13, The Night of the Blood Moon. The sky above the ancient forest bled into a deep, terrifying crimson. The blood moon Lao Chand had arrived, marking exactly 1 year since the night I was first claimed by the Emperor. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and wild jasmine. Kangdi carried me to a secluded clearing by the crystal lake, his golden eyes burning with a hunger that made the very trees tremble. I was a mess of emerald silk and tangled hair, my body vibrating with a fever that only he could extinguish. The time for gentleness was over. The beast within the king had finally broken its chains. He didn't wait to reach the mossy bank. With a low, guttural growl, Kangdi's massive bronze hands gripped the collar of my light green silk robe. With one powerful jerk, he tore the upper fabric apart, the sound of ripping silk echoing through the silent forest. I gasped as the cool night air hit my heated skin, but before I could shiver, he slammed me down onto the thick grass. My long black hair fanned out around my head like a dark halo against the green earth. He hovered over me, 9 feet of pure, unadulterated muscle, his shadow completely swallowing my fragile frame. Chapter 67, The Raw Claim. The divine fever had turned my blood into liquid fire. I didn't want a slow build-up. I wanted the pain, the weight, the reality of him. I arched my back, my hands clawing at his broad shoulders, begging him with my eyes. Kangdi understood. Without any preparation, without a single moment of hesitation, he forced himself deep inside me. I let out a choked scream that was half pain and half ecstasy, my fingers digging into his bronze skin. It was raw, it was hard, and it was exactly what my origin vessel craved. He was filling me so completely that I felt like I was being torn apart and reborn at the same time. Kangdi grabbed my wrists, pinning them high above my head with a single massive hand. He leaned down, his lips brushing against my ear, his voice a deep, vibrating bass that sent shivers through my soul. "Look at me, Seo-Jun," he rumbled, his breath hot and possessive. "Look at how I am consuming you. I am touching the very core of your being. Do you feel it? Do you feel how deep I am inside you?" I could only nod, my head tossing from side to side on the grass, my voice lost in a series of broken gasps. "You are mine," he hissed, his golden eyes glowing with a dark, obsessive fire. "Every inch of your skin, every drop of your blood, every breath you take, it all belongs to me. I am the only one who can reach this deep. I am the only one who can fill this void." The night became a blur of crimson light and rhythmic shadows. He was relentless, his movements driven by a 300-year-old hunger that never seemed to fade. Every thrust felt like he was marking my soul, claiming me for all eternity. I felt his large hands mapping my body, bruising my hips, stroking my chest, reminding me of the extreme size difference between us. I was a doll in the hands of a titan, a star caught in the gravity of a sun. I didn't want to be free, I wanted to be ruined by him. I wanted to stay on this grass, under this red moon, forever. As the moon reached its zenith, Kangdi finally collapsed against me, his heavy, muscular body pinning me into the soft earth. He released his warmth deep inside me, a final explosive seal on our bond. I lay there breathless and spent, my heart beating in sync with the giant who held me. He didn't pull away. He stayed there, his face buried in my neck, his long black hair veiling us from the world. "1 year ago I made you mine," he whispered, his voice soft but still filled with a terrifying obsession. "And every year, for the rest of eternity, I will remind you why you can never leave." I closed my eyes, the sound of the lake lapping against the shore the only sound in the night, knowing that I was truly, finally home. Part 14, The 5-Day Siege of Silk. Chapter 71, The Gilded Cage of Transparency. The morning after the forest encounter, I woke up in the familiar luxury of the Jade Chambers. My body felt heavy, humming with a residual heat that refused to fade. Kangdi was already awake, standing by the window, his massive bronze frame silhouetted against the morning sun. He turned to me, holding a garment that made my heart stop. It was a robe made of translucent, gossamer silk, so thin it was practically a veil. Along with it was a tiny, delicate silk undergarment. "Wear this," he rumbled, his golden eyes tracing the marks he had left on my skin the night before. I turned a deep, burning red. "Kangdi, everyone will see, it's completely transparent." "No one will see you but me," he whispered, his voice a dark caress. "The doors are locked, the world is gone, today you are only for my eyes." Despite my shame, the fever in my blood made me obey. As the silk slid over my skin, I felt exposed, vulnerable, and terrifyingly beautiful. When I stepped out of the dressing area, Kangdi was reclining on the massive bed of white furs. He looked like a god of leisure and lust. His gaze swept over me, lingering on the way the transparent silk clung to my pale curves. "Come here, Seo-Jun," he commanded, his voice thick with a growing heat. "Impress me. Show me how much you missed your master during those months of recovery." I felt the divine fever flare up instantly. My legs felt weak, and a familiar, desperate ache began to throb in my lower body. I walked toward him, my face flushed a deep crimson, my long black hair flowing over my bare shoulders. I was a man of the 21st century, yet here I was, a slave to the golden eyes of a titan. Chapter 73, Bound by Magic and Desire. As I reached the edge of the bed, Kangdi raised his hand. With a snap of his fingers, golden magical threads erupted from the air, wrapping around my wrists and binding them together. I gasped, my hands forced above my head, making my chest arch forward through the transparent silk. "You are too sensitive today," he murmured, his voice a low growl. "I want to see you struggle against the pleasure." He didn't use his hands at first. He leaned forward, using his teeth to slowly tug at the thin silk of my robe, baring my skin inch by inch. Every time his lips brushed against me, I let out a broken whimper. I was more sensitive than I had ever been. The birth of our son had awakened a new level of origin power in my blood, making my body crave his touch with a violence I couldn't control. Chapter 74, The 5-Day Blur. What followed was a descent into a beautiful, dark madness. For 5 days and 5 nights, the sun and moon meant nothing. The doors remained sealed. Kangdi was relentless, his 9-foot frame a constant, heavy presence over me. He stayed inside me for hours at a time, his warmth a permanent fixture within my body. We moved from the bed to the floor, from the floor to the bath, and back again. My origin vessel was like a bottomless well. No matter how much he gave, I wanted more. I found myself begging for his weight, crying out for him to never pull away. I was insatiable, my body rewriting its own limits to handle the sheer intensity of his titan strength. We were 2 souls fused into one, lost in a cycle of passion that felt like it would never end. Outside the jade chambers, the empire continued, but for us the world had shrunk to the size of a bed. The servants knew better than to knock. Every few hours, the sound of a silver tray being placed outside the door would echo through the hall, food and wine left by the giants who understood the sacred nature of the fever. Kangdi would occasionally carry me to the door, his arms wrapped possessively around my waist, to bring the food inside. He would feed me himself, his golden eyes never leaving mine, before pulling me back into the shadows of the bed. By the end of the 5th day, I was a mess of silk, sweat, and the emperor's scent. I lay against his broad bronze chest, my bound hands finally free, my mind a fog of pure, unadulterated surrender. Kangdi stroked my hair, his touch now gentle but still filled with a dark, lingering obsession. "You were magnificent, Seo-Jun," he whispered, his voice a deep, satisfied rumble. "Your body, it was made to be filled by me. You are the only thing in this universe that can survive my love." I looked at him, my eyes hazy and filled with a deep, soul-deep affection. I realized then that the fever wasn't a curse. It was the ultimate proof of our bond. I was the empress of the Obsidian throne, and for as long as I lived, I would be the only one who could contain the fire of the Golden King. This is the grand finale of Season 2, the Eternal Dynasty. We conclude the journey of Seo-Jun and Kangdi with a beautiful time skip, showing the legacy of their love and the power of the starborn bloodline. Part 15, The Eternal Dynasty, Grand Finale. Chapter 77, The Princess of the Silver Dawn. The 7 days of the divine fever didn't just strengthen our bond, they brought a new miracle. 9 months later, the palace was filled with the scent of blooming jasmine as I gave birth to our second child, a daughter we named Kanghi. Unlike her brother, she was born with skin as pale as moonlight and eyes that shifted between gold and silver. She was the perfect image of my father, Minho. Kangdi, the 9-foot titan who once only knew war, wept as he held her tiny form in his massive bronze hands. Our family was growing, and the Obsidian throne was no longer a seat of fear, but a sanctuary of life. 1 year passed in a heartbeat. I watched in amazement as our firstborn, Han Seo, defied all laws of nature. At just 1 year old, he was already walking with the steady grace of a warrior and speaking in clear, resonant tones. He would follow Kangdi around the training grounds, his tiny golden eyes fixed on his father's spear. He was a prodigy, his magic so potent that he could summon golden butterflies to entertain his baby sister. I realized then that our children were not just heirs. They were the beginning of a new race, beings with the strength of titans and the soul of the stars. Time skip 20 years later. 2 decades have passed since I first fell through that magic circle in Seoul. The Obsidian Empire has entered a golden age. I stand on the balcony of the High Palace, no longer the frightened boy in a hoodie, but the sovereign empress of the 3 realms. Beside me stands Kangdi. Time has not touched his beauty. He is still the 9-foot bronze god of my youth, his obsession with me as fierce and dark as the day we met. He still refuses to let me walk the halls without his hand on my waist, his golden eyes still devouring me with a hunger that 20 years of marriage could never satisfy. Our children have grown into legends. Our eldest, Han Seo, is a mirror image of his father, a 9-foot titan of bronze muscle and golden fire, the feared and respected crown prince. Our second son, Kangmin, took after me. He is a master of the starborn arts, his magic so vast he can move the very islands of the sky. And then there is our daughter, Kang-hee. With her silver hair and sharp intellect, she has taken the throne of her grandfather Minho's realm, ruling the silver mist with a grace that has united our worlds forever. They are the pride of the origin race, the strongest generation to ever exist. My father Minho and King Alaric also found their happiness. They had a son, my younger brother Alan. He grew up alongside my children, a warrior of incredible strength who inherited Alaric's moonlight bronze skin and Minho's unbreakable spirit. He stands as the general of the Silver Mist, a protector of our bloodline. Seeing my father finally at peace, holding his own son after 300 years of agony, is the greatest gift the universe has ever given me. We are a family of 2 worlds, bound by a history of sacrifice and a future of infinite power. As the sun sets over the Obsidian Palace, Kangdi pulls me back into the shadows of our chambers. The doors lock with the same golden seal he used 20 years ago. He lifts me into his arms, my feet dangling just as they did on our first night. 20 years, Seo-Jun, he rumbles, his voice a deep, vibrating bass against my ear, and I still feel like I'm starving for you. I wrap my arms around his neck, leaning into his warmth. I am the empress of an empire, the mother of gods, and the heart of a titan. I look into his molten golden eyes and smile. Then feed your hunger, my king, I whisper, for as long as the stars shine, I am yours. The divine fever begins anew, an eternal flame that will never go out.